well, there it is. Share my screen. As pitiful as it is, luckily you don't see the state of my screen. Oh, those of you came in a few minutes. I showed earlier. This is my screen is it looks like it's going. I don't know if you can tell from out there. Kind of just look at the edges. I mean, it's all. I think it's gonna. I'll be using that one more. Touchscreen. All right, so what I plan on doing today is just going over chapter 12, and chapter 12 is another one that's kind of short. I will probably be able to get through it all today, and that's my goal, and try to get through it, hit all of it so that we don't get that weekly thing. So next week I'll be on chapter 13. Once again, this Thursday there is no class, right? Everybody, I'm pretty sure will know that it is Thanksgiving, and had no intention, as myself, I have no intention of being here either. I'll be well into cooking turkeys, smoking turkeys. I have a smoker. I'm the family turkey maker. I've been doing it. One thing is good since I retired. Before I retired, people at work all the time, because I had this reputation. I do it pretty decent. One year I made 9 turkeys. I can only do 2 at a time in my smoker, but I had done up to 9 in 1 year. Yeah, I do actually. I use a pellet smoker, but it's still just crazy. So anyway, no class Thursday, but you do still have to take chapter 12, because I'm pretty sure I will finish chapter 12 today. All right, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There's nothing else due, right? Let's jump over to the Zoom. Let's go over here in the modules just to make sure. I'm sure I looked this morning, and that's all we have to do this week. I intentionally planned it that way, but I put the banner up too. So that's all. There is due if you have group 1 and 2. That's right. I'm sorry. I think I looked. Group 1 and 2, make sure you turn in your video, your recording of your presentation by midnight tomorrow, right? Hopefully, you guys group 1 or 2?
No, we're the following.
You're following me? Okay, yeah. There's nobody 1 or 2 here. You guys? Okay, you guys good to go, or will be good to go at least? Swimming upstream. All right. So make sure you get that groups 1 and 2. Make sure you get your presentation. Maybe I'll send out a reminder announcement too, maybe later today or tomorrow, and we'll make sure we get that. All right, let's move on. Let's get into chapter 12. Chapter 12 is business analytics. Analytics is becoming a different thing. I think there's a handful of students in this section. I don't know if it's in this section or the other one, that are business analytics majors. Analytics becoming more and more of a thing. I've always been kind of I'm a math person. My math background's math, so I've always been kind of look at the numbers, get statistics about things, and use the different statistical information to make decisions. So I've always kind of been on this game plan. It just wasn't called analytics before, and now it's becoming more popular, and it's actually a concentration now. So let's talk a little bit about what it is and what kinds of things we look at. Yikes. All right, so and why it's important. The first thing start out with it's important because I'm assuming most of you are here at some point. You want to either, if you are not a supervisor, manager, or whatever, some level of responsibility. I think at some point you will be. I hope that's your goal. Or maybe you're smarter than me and think that dealing with other people's stuff is a pain in the butt. And I've often thought, actually, I digress a little, and I was trying to get through all this. There's been times I'm like, I should have stayed totally technical and not gone into management, because dealing with personnel kind of things is much more difficult. But anyway, so the 3 primary roles in that the management has to do is interpersonal, like the first one says there. You got to be figurehead. You got to be a leader. You got to do those things. You've got to deal with employees. You got to get them to. You got to lead them, and you need to make sure that they're achieving whatever your objectives are, whatever the vision, and whatever the things that you need to do for the organization. Let me mute this. So that's first thing. Is interpersonal, dealing with people. And that's the one thing I find sometimes we promote people into those positions that they don't have the communication skills or the interpersonal skills. And so that can be very detrimental if you're a supervisor, boss, whatever you want to call it. Informational, the next thing one of the jobs is, your job is to pass information either, up and down the chain from what, you get information from the bosses and they tell you this is what we want you to do, or this is, give a status on this. So your information, you've got to make sure people know what's going on, as well as vertically or amongst all the people within the organization at your same level. So your job is to make sure that communication and information is being passed all over, up and down and across the organization. And then the last thing is decisional. Decisional, probably one of the things I think is most important part of being a manager. I mean, these other two are also important, but I'm really, I've mentioned making good decisions is always been one of the things use information, you get the data, generate some information and make good decisions. That's the people who are good decision makers, in my opinion, are the ones who usually bubble to the top and get promoted. They're the people I look for within when I'm looking at my staff, or when I was looking at my staff anyway, I was always looking to see, is this a person who has good decision-making ability, either natural, intuitive, kind of, they just make good decisions, or they use information and make good decisions. And that's what, this class is about information and how we use it. So, obviously that's what one of the things, try to figure out ways, how can you use information technology to help you make better decisions? All right, so the next chart is a decision tree. Just kind of walk you through, I don't know, this is an eye chart for here, but this is straight out of the book, figure 12.1. And so, yeah, usually look off here for these things, but all right. So the first thing, this is kind of how you go about the decision process. The first thing is, what is the problem? I'm just going to walk through it real quick. What is the problem? We first have to identify, and a lot of times that as simple as that sounds, a lot of times that is what creates the bigger problem. We don't always identify the problem. If you ever heard people talk about find the root cause, not necessarily what are the symptoms of the problem. A lot of times we see something and, actually I'll use this monitor. This monitor is doing, it's all kind of weird color and everything. And I've kind of already assumed in my mind that this monitor is going bad. And stupid thing. It's a touch screen. So I touch it and mess it all up. My assumption is it's all bad, and that might not be the root cause. It might be something as simple as there's the wire. I've already checked the wires on this side of it, and the wires are all in and correct. It could be the wire over here, but I've already made the assumption. I sent a text message that the monitor is bad, so they may come running down here with a new monitor and say, oh, he said the monitor's bad, and then they start messing with the wires. Oh, it's not the monitor. I didn't get the root cause. The real cause is the way it's plugged in. And so that's when you're problem solving, you always want to find what is the real root cause of what the problem is. You don't want to, you don't want to band-aid some of the different symptoms because then that doesn't fix it. Let's say somebody comes up here, they run up, they bring a monitor, they just disconnect this one, plug it in, and they don't even look over here and test. Guess what the new one's going to do? Exactly the same as this. So they were going after a symptom, but not really the problem. And that's what's important. We always need to find what is the root problem of the situation. Once you identify what the problem is, it's kind of nice that the monitor gives me a good example, I guess. So then once we figure out what the problem is, what are my options? In this case, let's say it was the wire wasn't plugged in right. It could be that if there's something wrong with the wire, it could be that the wire wasn't plugged in. It could be that the wire itself, the connector itself, the termination point it just went bad. So what are the options? Replace the wire, just plug it in or whatever. So you go through what are your different options and what are the different kinds of things we can do now that we understand the root cause or the root problem. And then the last thing is, okay, now that we know, we have different options, what's the easiest way? And in some cases you may say, well, I think it might be the wire. It may just be plugged in bad, but you know what? These wires are old and we have a box, that's a box full of HDMI cables. Let's just put a new one in there anyway, just in case, and replace it. That's one of those things. That's what, in a lot of, anybody ever you work in a PC shop or a tech support kind of shop. You know, every time you buy new machines, every time you buy a new, like a Dell computer or whatever, they send all the cables with it. And a lot of times what we end up doing, like with the cables are all run here and they're probably tired. You know, they have tie wraps around them to keep them nice and organized and stuff, probably do. And so one of the things that we do is like, there's already an HDMI cable. I'm not replacing that HDMI. So you just keep using the same one over and over. And guess what you do with all those new ones? You throw them in a box and they always have boxes full of HDMI cables, power cables, especially million. And at one point, when I got to the sheriff's department, it was one of the things I noticed. We had just one file cabinet full of cables, brand new cables. It's just taking up space. We're never going to use them. I said, you know, donate them somewhere, get rid of these things. So we always have a lot of cables. So anyway, so you find the choice, you pick your choice. And then the next thing you got to do is you got to start looking at, you implement the solution, and then you start monitoring and seeing, is this working? Did it fix the problem? Or does the problem come back, reiterate? So then you start looking at it again. And if in fact, sometimes you think I got the root cause and it turns out it was not that, it was something else. And so you may have to go back and do this whole cycle again. And that's kind of the basic problem solving kind of methodology. Figure out what the root cause is, figure out what are your choices. Pick one and then kind of make sure and check to make sure it works. Pretty straightforward stuff in general, but you'd be amazed how many people. It's very typical that they're looking for the symptom, and we fix symptoms a lot rather than actually finding root causes. All right, so why is decision making important? Why is it becoming hard, especially with this new IT world? The number of alternatives that we have in today's world. This is again the case of we have lots and lots of the good news is we have this IT stuff. The bad news is we have this IT stuff. There's so much more going on. We have so many more decisions that we're doing so many more things with technology. It's helping us be better, faster, smarter, but it's also creating more and more ways for us for things to go bad. So with the number of alternatives, the number of problems that can occur is increasing. A lot of decision making is made under time pressure too. There is this push that we got to get things done faster because our competitors probably are doing things faster or trying to do the same thing. So now there's pressure to get it done. So that's why we need technology to help us find stuff and fix it faster. Increased uncertainty with more options, with more decisions to make, it becomes more and more uncertain as well. And often necessary to rapidly access remote information, consult with different people. And so that's why, a lot of times we need to go get people externally as well. All right. Let's move on. All right, so talking about what's some of the frameworks or what's some of these different what the decision analysis and how do you go about looking at different types of problems, and from an IT perspective, how do we actually think of these things in order to start using decision-making tools? So there's different kinds of structure or how they're made up. And this is how we start looking at, okay, what type of a problem is this? And the first one is, a structured problem. Structured problems are things that are very well understood. Accounting, the practices of accounting, very, very structured. You do this, you do this, you do this. So it's a very well understood structured problem. And I like to use, I think I used the car example. When you drive home today or whatever, when I drive home, I know it's a very structured problem for me. I know where I live. I know where I'm at now. I have my set route that I typically take, although I can deviate from that, but it's a very structured, well understood problem for me. The next thing is semi-structured. Semi-structured is, it's pretty structured, but there are things that could change it somewhat. Somehow things could make it not so well understood so that you have to start, what are alternatives to this? And that's what, using the driving example of semi-structured, okay, like I said, I know where I'm at, I know where I live, I know how to get there. But let's say there's all of a sudden an accident on one of the freeways or one of the streets I typically drive on. Well, that creates, now I have to use how I go and how I'm gonna travel from here to there changes a little bit. So it's not as structured, it's not very well understood. It's just different now. And actually, let's make it even a little bit worse. Maybe there was an accident or a fire or something, and it messed up several different routes. So then I have to figure, so it makes it a little more difficult. And the last one, unstructured, totally not understood at all. You really have to figure out, the decision-making process is very difficult because there is no set way to do things. Major earthquake, everything's on fire. I'm trying to drive home. The roads are all jacked up. I gotta figure out how to get home. And conventional roads are all out, very unstructured kind of thing. So those are the kind of the different ways we look at it. And it's important to, when you're going through you try to generate different decision-making tools, you need to understand which one of those it falls into. The next thing, the nature of decisions. Three broad categories of how we put the different decision-making into. Operational control is very typically the first level. And these things kind of fall, they're very typical at, let's say I'm a first line supervisor. Operational control is doing those things that you do day in and day out at the line level or the lowest level, typically in the organization. In the recorder's office, when I worked there, recorder clerk, operational control would be things like, I think I've mentioned this. You go in there and you need to get a birth certificate. So the primary function that we do at the operational level is, you go in and you register, you go to the desk, and they get the information from you, and they print you a birth certificate, marriage license, whatever it is you're there to get. And so operational control kind of things would be making sure that all the information is there available, the tools are working and everything. So operational control is those things at that, the level, the day-to-day line staff kind of thing. Management control, it would be the next level up. Management control are those kinds of things. What are the tools that managers use to help make sure the operational things are getting done? For an example, I'll use that recorder clerk kind of thing. We develop tools, we develop dashboards for them. I think you can define what dashboards are. But dashboards for them so that there's all kinds of different things going on. You can go to the clerk's office and get a marriage license and a birth certificate. You can actually have a marriage ceremony. There's a whole handful of different things you can do when you go in there. And based on the day or our time of day, sometimes there'll be a whole boatload of people there for, let's say, marriage to get a marriage license and a marriage ceremony. Actually on a Friday, I think I mentioned this, if you have nothing better to do, go to the recorder's office on a Friday. It can be very entertaining when they're doing marriages and stuff. It's kind of great. They say that. Just a quick story. I swear it's short. So when I was working there, did I say this right? I was walking through, I came back from lunch. It was on a Friday. And as I'm walking by the sign-in, the registration desk, I hear there's a couple there. And I hear the guy, he goes, "Oh, we're here to get married." And it sounded like, I was like, did he have a gun in his head or what? He just didn't sound. And I look over and I think they were the same couple. All of a sudden I heard later that I think the story was she had been divorced. And I don't know if you're aware of this, if you have been divorced and you're going to get married, I think it's 6 months, you have to show your divorce decree saying that you are in fact divorced. I'm not sure of all the legal, but you have to show that before we can actually perform a marriage ceremony and give you a marriage license. And I think they're the couple. She had a divorce decree, but then they said, "We need to see that." And he said, "Let me see. Can I see that?" She said, no. She would not let him, the guy she's going to marry, see her divorce papers. And it was like, next thing you know, they're fighting, and we had to call the cops because they were in the parking lot going at it. So just like I said, go on a Friday because that's when the most of these things happen. Anyways, I digress. So in our management control, we may see that we have a lot of people here to get married. And, we only got 3 people working marriage, doing the marriage thing. And we got, 3 people working, birth certificates, death certificates. So let's switch, and so we have a dashboard saying, oh my God, the wait for weddings is it's in the red. We gotta shift some of the people because the people doing birth and death, man, there's no line there. So we had those management controls, the dashboards that would tell us how, and that we could rebalance the workload for the staff. So management control kind of things. All right, strategic. I don't know why these crazy examples jump into my poor little brain. Strategic planning, last one on here. Strategic planning are those things to help you think of what are we doing long term, and how do we plan for that. Staying on that same example, strategic planning may be, okay, we know that certain days or certain things happen and our trends are we're getting, more and more of certain things. So I need to hire more people. Hiring is, more strategic in nature because you hire people for long term. You don't hire them typically. You can hire short term, but very typically long term kind of things. So what are the things you need to do for a long term planning purposes? And the next thing, the decision matrix, there's a diagram. I didn't write the reference on here. Yeah, it's on figure 12.2 that talks about how these things work. As it turns out, that first block, these structured, semi-structured and unstructured, and then the next 3, they kind of go hand in hand to some degree. Not completely, but usually the operational kind of stuff are usually more structured. What do the people need to do? How do we get people to the counter? What are the processes? What are the tools they need in order to do a birth certificate, the death certificate? Semi-structured, things are changing and how you have to, that's usually management control kind of things. And then the last one, the unstructured decision making, is usually more strategic. We want to do all these kinds of things long term for our product or service. And the world's changing. All of a sudden, you got things like COVID hit, and then what do we do? So strategic things tend to be more unstructured. And then, of course, we have tools for it. And we're gonna talk about that in a minute. So I am gonna just skip over that for now. All right. Business analytics process. All right, and so the first thing, the business intelligence kind of tools. And I'm trying to business intelligence in chapter 14, which is 2 chapters away from now, the last chapter. And we're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of these tools that we use. AI is obviously becoming more and more of a business analytics tool. But basically, the scope of business intelligence is we're now creating a few business intelligence kinds of things. Tools that help you think about it. And I'm going to show the next chart shows actually some of the business intelligence stuff. Actually, it's the one after that. So I'm going to and it's using different things, different tools for it. We also use it for infrastructure within the organization to look at different things. Specifically, one of the things that some of the different business intelligence kind of stuff, we had tools that we bought for like networking. Networks are part of your infrastructure. And we had business intelligence kind of tools that would watch and see how much traffic do we have. I talked about that throughput stuff. Well, as the throughput that we're using, as it's going through as the bits are going through the network, we look and we analyze and we see, oh, okay, certain things are happening at certain times of the day. We get a whole bunch, it's almost saturated. We can't put anything else through there. So everybody's saying slowness. So those tools, those business intelligence tools will say, oh, okay, something's going on at this time, and it helps us to alerts us and tells us, okay, now we need to make certain changes. Usually a management change, or we tell them at the operational level to do certain things differently. But that's what there are tools to help support business intelligence or how we use our infrastructure as well. And then some of the stuff for changing how you change and transfer the organization long term. I'm going to jump over that, pretty straightforward stuff. Let me go to the next one. It's going faster than that. Anyway, All right. So once again, this is probably an eye chart to some degree. The business analytics process. Good. Really have trouble seeing this part of my glasses on now, so I can see this stuff. So the business analytics process in general, you have on the, I'm gonna come over here, it's easier. I can't talk from that screen because it's just too bad. All right, this is not much better, is it? So you have some business problem or some operational need. Operational needs are what are the things, probably not off the screen for now, this thing, you better fix this next time. It's driving me crazy. You have some operational need or something that you need to be done. I think the book on here actually calls it the very bottom pain points. What are the things that we need? Things aren't working, so we need to fix something. We need to do something different. I don't know if anybody ever heard that term, your pain points. Pain points are, as you know, as an IT manager, one of the things that we'd always talk about, what are your pain points? What are the things that keep you up at night? And that was the other way they'd ask you, as a, oh my gosh, what if the network goes down? What if this important employee goes? What are those things that within the organization that need to be addressed, or they're higher risk kinds of things? So then the next block here is we have the data, is the data management. We have all these things coming in, right? As far as our analytics, we have all the things we talked about, and I think it was chapter 5. We have external information, we have internal information, we have different, different stuff that we've collected, processes that are going on in whatever our product and services on a regular basis. So we have all this stuff. We have that second block. We have this information that we use. So now we need to start looking at what decisions can we make about that, or what can we use that, and how can we use that as part of making better, faster, smarter decisions. And the book describes 3 different types of descriptions or different ways that we analyze them. And the first one is descriptive analytics. Descriptive analytics are usually, and the way to think of them is based on, okay, something happened, or now we need to figure out what are we going to do about it, or how do we correct that? So we have to make a decision. We use all that information stuff in that second block here, this guy here, and we have to figure out what are we going to do, how are we going to go about fixing it, because something has happened. And so that's one type of decision making. Another one is what could happen. We might be, okay, nothing has happened yet. I'm kind of nervous because maybe our network, our infrastructure kind of stuff is pushed, and we don't have, something might break. So now I have to make a decision. Okay, well, if, it seems I don't really have enough money to buy, top of the line network stuff, or maybe I don't have any money. So you start using that information, all the information you have, because that something could happen to your network. I think I mentioned, I earlier mentioned, back in the day, it was actually back in March, April, the sheriff's department they got hit with the ransomware. That's one of those things, well, we know it could happen and we try to, but it happened anyway. It's predictive analysis. You're trying to predict what happened.
Didn't they end up paying out to that too?
Yes, they did end up paying out. Which, are you cybersecurity?
Yeah.
Yeah, you cybersecurity types. What's the number one rule about when you get ransomware? Never pay out. Never pay out. But I think the rationale, I think the logic they used was that it's law enforcement, man. I don't know. I don't know if I would
act for that too. So should they have only lost like 24 hours worth of maybe stuff at that point?
Should have, right?
Okay.
Well, I don't know. Luckily I don't work there anymore, but yes, who's no longer employed? The backup guy.
Yeah.
He is no longer employed at the sheriff's department. Well, I think he got fired, and it's in one of those, of course he's got legal.
One of those transitionary.
Yeah, so I went by a couple of weeks ago just to say hi, hey, how you guys doing? He still has an office, he still has all his stuff in there, but he's not working. So anyway, yeah. But it did happen. $1.1 million later. They got the keys. So anyway, yeah, that's kind of stuff. And then there's read better here. Prescriptive analysis, what should we do? What are the things we should be doing? Well, there's the stuff that something happened and what we gotta fix it. There's something where, and that third group, prescriptive, what should we be doing in the future? And you'll notice there's a pattern here. It's more along, very similar, operational management kind of decision, and then strategic in the future. So the last block there, we have alternative business decisions. We make decisions, we take, once again, very important, and that's why I try to over preach this. Man, we got to use that information. You get information all the time, and use that information to help you do one of these types of decision making. And I think that's the thing, what really kills me is I still find in a lot of situations, what do we do when something happens, especially in that first one, the descriptive, where something happened and we have to figure it out. We do things seat of the pants. We say, oh, this is what we're going to do. And we don't make necessarily smart decisions because we don't look at the facts. We don't find out what that root cause is. And so I think that's very, very important. Always look and find out and understand. Use the information, use the data that you have. All right, that's why I did the tool. The tool is based on a lot. Take the information, do some processing, and then make a decision based on that. All right, so the next chart. All right, so what kind of different tools do we have and we use? And there are a lot of stuff that's been out there for a long time. My glasses anymore. Things like spreadsheets, a lot of spreadsheet. A lot of places, a lot of organizations still have good old fashioned spreadsheets. You put information in there, you analyze it, you look at it, and that's what the tool was, right? I had you use a spreadsheet. I'm trying to remember which one did I use in here? I don't remember which one. I already graded. It was like weeks ago. You remember the tool? That's done. I don't remember. Anyway, I change it every semester. Anyway, so we had, you have a spreadsheet, you get information, you process it, and then you come up with, you analyze it and you come up with recommendations. Very common, a lot of organizations still do it. Next thing is OLAP, or online analytic processing. And I got a video for that. I'm going to show that. I don't know how long this is. I think it's actually kind of long, but we'll show it anyway.
To be free and flexible and creative was really essential to what I wanted to make. And I didn't find a platform that did that other than Wix. Hi,
in this lesson, you understand the concepts of OLAP, MDX, and business intelligence. But before we move on to OLAP, let's look at some of the problems that OLAP was invented to solve. Dr. E.F. Codd, an IBM scientist, invented the relational database in the early 70s. In 1979, Oracle released their first commercial relational database product. By the mid to late 80s, relational databases had come of age. Almost all big corporations used
trying to think of it.
A relational database to store their
Well, it
data.
has the words
But
out here.
with the adoption of relational databases came a problem.
Let's see if this is doable.
Companies found that relational databases were great at storing data, but made it difficult to generate management reports from transactional data. If, for example, you needed to report sales for a specific month, the database server would potentially have to loop through millions of transactions in order to generate a total. On the hardware of the day, this would often slow down the entire system to the point where it became unusable for critical business operations. Of course, the reports would still be generated eventually, but the whole process took far too long. So Dr. Codd looked at the problem once again and came up with the solution: OLAP. The idea behind OLAP was to pre-compute all of the totals and subtotals needed for reporting at night or at the weekend when the database server was normally idle. The totals are stored in a special database called an OLAP cube. An OLAP cube doesn't have to loop through any transactions because totals
All right, I'm
are
gonna
all
stop this.
pre-calculated,
Sorry.
providing instant access.
Let me just try real quick to reopen the link. Doubt that's gonna make a difference. Optimistic.
In this lesson, you're going to understand the concepts of DX and business intelligence. But before we move on to OLAP, let's look at some of the problems that OLAP was invented to solve.
Showing is
Dr. Ian.
all right, let kill it. Sorry. See if I can figure it out in between classes because it's gonna kind of be. All right, so you might want to look at that, watch that video. It's actually a decent video. Basically, OLAP is it's a analytic tool online. And one of the things it does is because we have things and now, and as you're well aware, things aren't just single dimensional anymore. We have multi-dimensional kind of things. We have sales, we have salespeople, that's what I think they go through and talk about in here. They have different ways that we can slice and dice and look at stuff. So, it's not just very straight and simple kind of calculations and looking at things. And that's what they had the Rubik's Cube up there. And they start going through and showing, okay, in this layer, we can show all the sales, for example, on I think for clothing or something in a store. Well, then, in another dimension, we can actually look at that as the different salespeople. So this person sold this, and that's why they're using the Rubik's Cube to show that there's multi-dimensions on way we can look at information. And so that's what an OLAP tools do. The OLAP tools are there to help you. Maybe you're smarter or better at these complex kind of things, but looking at things from multiple dimensions is very difficult for us. And so that's what OLAP tools do. They take all the information in and allow you to slice it in different ways, look at it in different dimensions that you may not intuitively be able to do on your own. You can actually do that to some degree if you use Excel or use some spreadsheets. They have pivot tables. Anybody use pivot tables in there? Pivot tables try to do those same kinds of things, that multidimensional kind of stuff that you see in OLAP. So anyway, all right. So another one. Let's see. Let's press our luck and let's see if this one works. It's a machine-based problem, I'm sure. So.
Looking for gold in a mine
Beautiful.
of information? Data mining can help. Like how mining for gold.
So let's talk about data mining. I'll talk through it too. Data mining. Okay, we take all this stuff, we shove it into data structures. We have all this kind of stuff in there. And what do we need? Obviously, it's great to be able to put stuff into a data warehouse or a data repository of sorts. But the reality is, what good is the data if we can't take it out and organize it into some level of information? So data mining are different tools that go in and start helping you pull out these things and doing things similarly to what OLAP does. Looking at it in ways that maybe you wouldn't intuitively been able to do it yourself. And some of the data mining tools, which now are starting to incorporate artificial intelligence, we'll start looking at, let's look at this, and with respect to that, looking at things in a different way that are not so intuitive for the person naturally to do it, and start trying to find new solutions or new ways to solve old problems, kind of stuff. So that's the data mining part of it. And the next chart is a lead into the data decision support, or what types of different data decision making do we make. We're going to be done a little faster because we lost the videos. All right, so what kinds of different decision support tools do we use, or different types of decisions are we actually using them to make? And once again, this chapter is important because hopefully it inspires you. I want to just since I got now I got a little bit extra time. Some of the things we go to work every day. I don't know about, at least I did for several years. And what do we do? We tend to, I got the same stuff I got to do the same thing over and over. I got to check my email. I go through my email, and then I know I do these same things day in and day out. And sometimes we don't stop down and say, I need to make, how can I do these decisions? How can I do things a little different? And that's what decision support tools and decision making hopefully will help you make decisions differently, or change the way you've been looking at things and look for different opportunities. Sensitivity analysis. A sensitivity analysis usually is looking more towards the product itself and saying, okay, you know, if we make some changes, let's say I'm, you know, grab back, look at my friend, the desktop again. If I change, some aspect of it, I use a different CPU on the motherboard that I haven't used before. How does that change the way the actual device works itself? Not to get too much into it, but a different CPU chip or a different, you know, chipset or something on it could create more heat. So you have the, you know, sensitivity analysis, you would have, you know, tools that look at and say, okay, if I have a CPU that's using and creating more heat, what is that? Oh, well, you know, I better have a better fan, or I better have enough fan capacity to cool the thing, and all those kinds of things. So a sensitivity analysis looks at what, you know, usually somehow contained within the product itself. What happens to the product if we change some of the aspects of it? What if analysis, now looking outside of that, what if we change some of the inputs? You know, what, you know, and I guess I'll stay on that same example. So let's say I use a different CPU on the device itself, and that makes, you know, because I use a better one or a cheaper one or something, how does that affect, what is that going to do to my sales of it? Is this going to be better for the people? Are we going to be more profitable? So what if analysis is now looking outside the, you know, the product itself, and usually is looking to how is that going to help the business? What if we do this change? We buy a cheaper CPU. What happens? You know, people now, or if we don't change the price, we're going to make more profit, right? But what if that thing starts failing because, you know, it's just cheap? It doesn't last. I don't know. It doesn't do as much. You know, the throughput is slower or whatever. So people are, this thing's slow. I don't, you know, I'll buy one. You know, whatever. So what happens? What is going to happen if you change? You do make that change. And the last one's very similar, but somewhat different. Goal seeking. Usually goal seeking is the opposite, saying, okay, looking at the end result. I want to make X amount of dollars. This is what I want my profit to be. I want to make, you know, 20% profit on each item that I sell. Well, how do I change? Then that's when you back up. You're goal seeking. You start with a goal and say, well, in order to make 20%, I got to change these parts inside. I got to make them cheaper or whatever. Or so you change. So goal seeking is looking, you start at the end and then work your way back. All right. So business analytic tools and using predictive analysis used in all kinds of fields. You know, this is just a shopping list. Pretty much, I think the bottom line message for this is you can use it in any kind of, you know, all the different fields, retail, banking, police work. That's when I'm, you know, I just retired from probably the one I understand the best. We used all kinds of, we had different things that we used to look at crime statistics and stuff. Probably actually kind of a controversial one. Law enforcement we had different tools that look at, I think I showed that heat map of crime, right?
Yeah.
We have stuff like that, right? We had stuff when we use that. So this is where the controversy part of it becomes, is when you have a heat map like that shows, okay, majority of your crime happens in, you know, within this geographic region, right? So what do you do? If you know that most of your crime is committed there, what do? Well, you're going to put more resources there, right? You're going to send more cops there. Well, now that they're there, you have more cops there. What ends up happening? Well, they're going to see more crime there because they're there, right? Whereas in the outskirts, nobody's there. So it's like that. So there's where the dichotomy is. Well, of course, they're going to be, now you're going to see even more crime because there's more cops in that area, right? Did you get the dilemma here kind of? And that's where the controversy, people are like, well, yeah, because you're patrolling here more. That's why you're seeing more crime. But then the other side is, well, yeah, but we're sending everybody there because it tends to be higher crime. That's one of those judgment kind of things, but that's where you use analytics to try to figure out how do you balance those different controversial types of things. Yeah, so I don't know how you feel about all of that. I don't know the right answer. I certainly get the dilemma of it. Not my call. I just provide the information to the important people, the sheriff himself and all the important smart guys. Say, you guys tell me, here's the information. You guys operationally do whatever you want.
So it's kind of like confirmation bias in a sense.
Absolutely. You're confirming, yeah, oh, yeah, if you're not familiar, confirmation bias is if you want to find it.
Like, wait. I'm happy to.
Yeah, confirmation bias is typically, you say, there's certain things, I believe this to be the case. And so I'm gonna go and I'm gonna look and I'm gonna analyze it, and it becomes the case because you're confirming based on what your beliefs are, right? And confirmation bias, is very, very, we do that a lot politically, that's one thing. Confirmation bias in politics just drive me nuts. That's what, everybody, we tend, and I think AI contributes to that. Stuff we have in social media, you look at certain things, if you're politically left or right, I'm not gonna get into one or the other. But, if you start looking, the more you look at stuff that's one way or the other, left or right, it starts driving you, sending you more stuff towards that. And it confirms your biases. Okay, yeah, well, all the Democrats are nuts, all the Republicans are nuts, because so it confirms the bias towards it and keeps pushing you deeper into a bias. Absolutely. So yeah, and that's what, yeah, it's a tough call. And I think that's the danger. We'll probably talk more about that when we talk about artificial intelligence. It's becoming it's more complex now because of all those things. But all kinds of stuff, weather, politics, weather, that's what we use. Weather actually, I don't know. For me, I remember back when I was a kid, man, the weather never was right. If it said it was going to rain tomorrow, the sun's going to be out. I think I think the weather is much better than it used to be, right? Anybody still hate actually it was supposed to rain. I thought it was supposed to rain a couple of days ago and it never did. So I don't know. But I think the analytic tools for weather are a lot better than they used to be. All right. And I'm not going to go through all of these. You can probably dream up your own analytics. All right, so the last thing on here, dashboards, different types of dashboards. I talked about dashboards as an example earlier. Dashboards are usually some kind of representation and way to look at the analytics, and then let some manager, supervisor, whatever your job is in the organization, make a decision based on it. And I typically think of dashboards as graphically based, although some of these report types are not graphically based. Like I was talking about earlier, when we had decisions to in the clerk's office, it was a dashboard of sorts. We had little dials that showed, we defined if people are waiting more than 30 minutes, that's like yellow, it was cautious. So we had a little gauge that showed people in the marriage queue are waiting more than 30 minutes, or in the birth certificate queue. If they were more than 45 minutes to an hour, it was red. So it was like, a kind of little gauge that showed. But anyway, so the different types of dashboards that are there, a drill down report necessarily is, let's say I'll use the example of retail. You're in a retail store, and at the end of the day, you get a report that says you had a total sales of, $10,000 today. So a drill down report would say, okay, that's good. Nice to know I made $10,000, but what does that mean, or how do we do that? A drill down report, and very typically a lot of times you click on it or something, you select that, and that'll break it down into, okay, well, we have, we're a clothing store. We sold, and maybe the next level down would be men's and women's clothes. So it goes down to the next level. I'll drill down and say, oh, okay, in the women's clothes, you click on that, you drill down, you keep going down lower and lower, and you see, okay, there's, shoes, dresses, I don't know, all different kinds of women's clothing kind of stuff. So a drill down report keeps getting lower and lower. The heck? Man, this is please tell me that. And is the sensor out too? Man, this room is like, I give up. Maybe I was not supposed to teach today. There we go. Usually that doesn't happen. It does happen when I'm in here by myself or setting up and stuff, because the sensor doesn't catch the movement. But man, this is like be a long day. Maybe I'm going to call it Uber to get home too. I'm not driving, man. I'm telling you. You guys get out of here way before me, because I don't know, maybe it's me. Anyway, so that's what it drilled down. It keeps getting lower and lower until you get down to the bottom. This person sold it for this amount, you get down to the very lowest level. I wonder, enough that you think the sensor would have caught it. All right, so the next thing, critical success factors. This used to be a big thing that was taught in a lot of classes, but I hear they don't teach it much anymore. So I do like to cover it here. Anybody familiar with CSF's critical success factors? Critical success factors are those things, and by definition, is those things that you have to do right or something you won't be able to achieve your objectives. So what are those things? And when I would meet with my team, okay, we do all the, all the different types of, okay, let's talk about, all the good planning kind of stuff. And I like to do the CSFs. Okay, what are the things that if we don't do right, it could have problems. And in law enforcement, one of the CSFs we have is, because it's 24/7, we have to have our systems up and available at the jail 24/7, up and available for patrol 24/7. Dispatch, very, very important for those guys. So that was a critical success factor, to be available and working, the system's working 99.999% of the time. And so things like that. What are the things you have to do right in order to meet the organizational objectives? And it's funny, it's kind of a negative way in a lot of ways to look at stuff, but it's another way to understand it. Key performance indicators are those things. Sometimes we have certain things that, let's go back to the retail stuff. In a retail store, let's say that if you sold 50% of your sales, or you sold, I said 10,000. Let's say if $5,000 worth of your sales are in women's shoes or something, that is a good day for you. And typically, if you sell a lot of shoes, women's shoes, I don't know why I picked that. Then that's an indicator that your profits are probably going to be you're probably good. I can say just popped into my brain. Like in restaurants, I believe alcohol sales. If you have high percentage of alcohol sales. Anybody working in restaurants have high profit margin on alcohol. So if you have high percentage of alcohol sales, I think that's a key indicator, that you probably will be more profitable. Status access, those things just kind of status. I'm getting my charts on. Man, I was like a couple charts behind. Status access. So understanding and getting status about certain things. Let's say in a manufacturing line, that you have certain things that are going on. You see status of is it working or not in your car. Your car has all kinds of indicators on what's going on. How is the gas, how much gas is being put in, and the gas and air fuel, the fuel mix on it, and is that working right? There's all kinds of things in there to compensate and understand what's going on. So status information is something that can be reported as well. Trend analysis. Trending is usually looking at and reports that look at something, and trends are usually based either geographically or time-based. Geographically being, let's say we have a certain product, and how is that doing trend-wise versus on the East Coast versus the West Coast versus the East Coast, and how is it doing in one versus the other? And that would be, how are the trends on one? And you use those kind of things, right? To say, okay, well, this doesn't sell very well on the West Coast, like going to clothing again, heavy coats and really warm clothes, right? Well, we probably sell that here, but we don't need it nearly as much as they do in the Midwest and the the Northeast. So we don't, and so you would use that information to know, okay, we're not going to posture and market stuff for them based on that. So trends based on geography. There's also trends based on time usually. This time of the year, annual, we're getting into the Christmas season. If we're not selling as much. We usually sold a lot more. We're a toy store. We usually sold a lot more, by this time last year we were either higher or lower. So you can see, is the trend high, better or worse? So then you can use that information to say, okay, maybe we're lower. So maybe we just need to advertise more and get people to know, hey, remember, here we are, Joe's retail store, come out here and, we're still here. So those kinds of things, that's a trend, usually geographic versus time-based. And the last one, exception reporting. I like, exception reporting is, usually looks at, okay, we have normal things going on all the time, right? So, whenever, but sometimes, you know, all the reports, you know, a lot of this stuff that's out there, what ends up happening with management or people that are supervisors with, as we get these reports on a regular basis? Usually they're all the same, right? Yeah, everything, you know, especially status kind of stuff. And the status is always the same. What do? You stop looking at it, right? So you get blind to it, and then, you know, all of a sudden something happens. It's in that status report, but you're not looking at it anymore because, like, you know, I get this every day, and you know, but it's never different. And so now something happens. So exception reporting does the opposite for you. It says, oh, okay, something just happened, and I never get a report, that report, unless something did happen. So those I kind of like those. Those are the ones that are very effective because they pop out at you based on certain events. When I was in the assessor's office, we had a lot of exception reporting. The assessor, once again, does the value property for taxation. And if something happens, if an appraiser values a property, there's all kinds of triggers for exceptions. Let's say you drop a property's value by more, I think it was more than like 15 or 20%. And there's numbers, I don't know what the numbers are now, but that could be an indicator that somebody went in and maybe they changed the value of their friend's property, or they changed the value of commercial property dramatically because or for whatever reason. We had exception reports that would kick that out and send it to a manager. So the manager could say, can review it and say, this is kind of shady. That property got burned down last year. So it is devalued. So there's exceptions so that management has an opportunity to make sure that it's legitimate kind of stuff. I hear banks, any bank type. My sister works with the FDIC. She's a bank auditor, and they have all kinds of reports. If you deposit, a certain amount of money, if you went in, I don't know what the numbers are. Let's say you went in and deposited $20,000 every day for 5 days a week. Where's that money coming from? It kicks an exception report for that, or certain things. There's all kinds of different things. I don't know what they all are, but
I think nowadays it'll look suspicious for one $10,000 transaction.
One $10,000. That's what interesting. Yeah. Wow. My sister's actually, she's trained in money laundering. She's one of her responsibilities in the FDIC is to look for money laundering. I always tell her, teach me how to do that, man. Teach me how to get away with it. I don't know.
Just so you know.
Just like, inquiring minds want to know. Absolutely. I'd get caught. I'm that guy. I'd get caught. Trust me. I can't keep the lights on or whatever. I don't know. So anyway, so that's what exception reporting does. And that is the last chart. That's the end of chapter 12. It got done a little earlier than I expected, but it is what it is. I'm going to try to figure out now what the hell's going on with the sound on this thing. All right. Any other questions? Remember, group 1 and 2. Yeah. Group 2 is due tomorrow by midnight. And 1 and 2, make sure you get it in. Make sure you do the quiz for chapter 12. You can do it before Sunday too. Believe me. I look at the statistics and laughing. It's not so much in this class. My fully online class, my graduate class. I have their midterm. I did their midterm on. Because it's online, it's essay questions, and I did it on Sunday nights from 6 to midnight. They have to do that exam online, and I had a couple students complaining, "Why do you do it on Sundays?" And I go back and all the assignments are due on Sundays, and they always all turn them in on Sundays. I'm like, you turn them in on Sundays anyway, so what's what's the difference now? Anyway, I see. I use the statistics, the information inside there to find out when are they turning them in anyway, and so anyway, I use that back against them. Anyway, have a great Thanksgiving. I'm just rambling now, as we're rambling more than usual. Have a good one. Dude, don't get too crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
Never got it. All right, I'll send it again. Okay. I'll do it on my computer right now.